So you've got a business challenge, and our answer to you is going to be hire.
Or lower.
Or recruit.
Which one? Recruit.
And
Yes.
this came off a mastermind that we've just done yesterday as we record this in Birmingham with our lovely private masterminders. And it seemed to us in the room that almost every challenge they brought to the table had the answer recruitment.
Yeah, even when the question was nothing really to do with recruitment, eventually we worked out that recruitment was the answer. So what were the challenges? Or what was the results of the challenges?
What problems were the challenges causing for them?
Yeah.
Were things like, and these are growing agencies, right? One agency has been around for, I think it's like 20 years, but the rest of them are pretty new in the first sort of 3-4 years. And the challenges that were presenting themselves were the owners were becoming frazzled, doing too many things, getting tired, families hated them, they were resenting work, they were working, one guy said 100 hours a week. Obviously, it's not sustainable. That was a short-term fix because he's a new agent.
Yeah.
And what happens after that is if you overwork, you do start resenting your business. Your business becomes an enemy and not your friend. And you start feeling that you can never, ever do enough.
Yeah, I think there's probably a more common symptom for people listening, and that's that you hit a ceiling you can't get through.
A financial ceiling.
A financial. And that's probably the most common...
like a clue.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking through it. So I think most of the listeners that may have a successful business probably don't even realise it.
Yeah, so we've got a client at the moment. Let's call her Julie. She's not called Julie, but let's call her Julie. And I sat down and looked at her revenue pattern over the last 10 years, and it had flatlined, albeit a little bit of bumps up and down for COVID and post-COVID. And I said to her, I know exactly what the challenge is, that you're doing all the work in the agency. Because if you had a helicopter view and you're acting as your own CEO, you would have grown in that time. Because you wouldn't employ a CEO and expect them not to grow over 10 years. So you must be doing all the jobs in the agency. And this happens time and time and time again, doesn't it? When an agent flatlines. And quite often in the first couple of years, you think, oh, this is amazing, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200. Then you get to about 300 and that's where it stalls.
Yeah. And we've spoken about this before. I sort of get it because it's then the difference between being... an estate agent and a business owner, and there's a few challenges in that crossover. One being some don't want to make that crossover, or don't know how to, or don't understand it actually is a crossover.
I'm not sure if they don't want to, because they want the results.
No,
I think they're in denial that they think they can get to the results without.
No, because I've experienced it a little bit where it's an identity. It's a purpose of coming into work to then go and get loads of instructions that results in money. To step away from that and give it to somebody else does lead a bit of a void when you've been on the treadmill for 5, 6, 7 years building it. It's quite difficult to come off that. So I think anybody that may have experienced it or thought about it, consciously or maybe subconsciously, that's a wall that I think many people don't want to go through.
I think when a business sort of hits about 300,000 turnover and the owner is doing loads and loads of jobs, they're probably taking a personal income of about £5,000 a month. So
maximum.
Yeah, so they're probably okay, not flush, but okay. Better than they would be if they'd got a job of 30k. So I think for that extra amount of money, sometimes they just think, right, I'll coast, I'll stay here. Or they think, I'll do more, I'll work harder. And then that doesn't actually result in anything because they can't move the needle enough. But I think what you're talking about is that sense of identity. That is specifically, I think, for valuers. So when the owner tries to step out of valuing or thinks about it, that's when you get your own pushback. You wouldn't think twice about hiring a receptionist, even if you had been doing everything yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another reason why we push hard on making decisions from day one to scale. And we still get masterminders come in, and we have masterminders that get to a stage of their agency where they look back and sort of understand what we meant when we said don't get dragged into things like doing your own photography or doing your own viewings, and obviously there's a time at the beginning you have to do your own viewings, but make sure there's a plan to get out of them. Don't get dragged into the video tours and all these things that might look quite sexy and quite the logic will tell you that you'll win business through it when you first open, but is an absolute tie 2-3 years down the line when the challenges flip on their head, and now it's about recruitment, about leadership, about KPIs and a bit more business stuff. I remember, I think I've said this before, that I went and met the founder of Greggs a couple of years ago, and we were talking about his few years in opening Greggs, and I was talking about, although not comparable, the first few years of here, and he said to me, the first few, it never gets more exciting or fun than the first few years, and at the time you don't. When you're in the first few years, you don't really think of that. Mm-hmm. Do you think about maybe the rewards the other side or whatever it may lead to? But I do think that's a reason why many don't want to come out of it, because it is an exciting part. And the business ownership part of it definitely doesn't give you the same dopamine hits or excitement maybe, and it's a totally different aspect of it.
Yeah, you're right. And I think if you try and get excited by the end result, the scaling and what that could give you, either by exit because you're selling or exit because you're going to take a passive income, and what that could do for your life, that is actually exciting. It's an exciting prospect, but it's a very long-term prospect. At first, it's like, oh, I've got a valuation. That's amazing. Your first valuation, then you've got your first instruction, and then, you've got your first 3 homes on the market, and you've got your first home under offer. It's all very, very new, isn't it? Exciting. Once you have your 200th or 500th home under offer, it's like, it's nothing, is it?
No.
It's a sneeze.
It's a number.
Yeah. So it is hard to keep that momentum going. And also, and again, we've spoken about this on the pod before, to transition from, like you said, from being the owner that's actually an estate agent to the owner of a business where you have to do things like recruitment. So we were talking to a masterminder yesterday that wanted to delegate the reviews that he's doing, staff reviews, and he's only got, I think, 6 staff. So he shouldn't be delegating it, because without being able to help develop those 6 staff, he can't step back. So in order to delegate it, he has to earn the right to delegate it over several years of doing the reviews, because there's nothing more important than the team.
Yeah.
And if he got a valuer in, that's what he'd have to spend all his time doing. You spend tons and tons of time with Tom, don't you? Yeah. And especially in the first year, you really had to coach him and make sure he was as much in your kind of approach as possible.
Yeah. It pays you back down the line. I think what we found yesterday is that it's a private mastermind, so they've come through a certain level of business, and the challenges then switch on the head, as we've said. But what happens in business, and Jeff Bezos talked about this quite a lot, is that you take risks is a funny word, but you take chance, I guess, and I guess risk in some circumstances, but you're on the front foot, you're very aggressive, you're attacking in sports terms to get. I mean, if you're a football fan, an easy thing to think about is when a team goes 2-0 up at half time, it's known as a dangerous scoreline, because if the other team scores next, it's a bit of a mind mess, yes, to know whether you go try and get the third, or do you sit back and defend the one. So 2-0 lead is known as a very dangerous scoreline at half time. And it's a similar thing with agency or business where you get to a point where you've got a great life, a great team, a successful business. So now do you continue attacking to go and get that next goal, or to go and get that new area or new office or new business or new part of what you do? Or do you go, right, I don't want to lose this now, so you sit back and you protect it? And both have dangers attached to it, but the sitting back will only lead to you slowly losing control of what you've created. You can't create a business by sitting back and being defensive and playing defensively. So therefore you can't maintain or grow. And as the saying goes, if you stand still, you're going backwards. It is the same thing. And that's what we're talking about when you get to the stage of you've got a successful business, a good income. That's the time to now go, right, what's the next step? What's the next avenue we're going to take this business? If you're doing the valuing, then how do you free up your time? Well, that's employ a valuer. If your team are crazy busy and you don't want to invest the 20, 25, 30,000, whatever it is, on a new team member, well, that's going to cost you down the line because all your team members are going to lose, and it's put you on the back foot. So that's what we mean by when there's a challenge, and if you feel like you're at your ceiling of your business, the answer is usually to hire. What position frees you up, or what position frees the person up in your business that's going to go and create more income? And I think we've spoken about this a lot of times, haven't we? The future org chart is the simplest way of doing that.
Yeah, do you want to explain what the future org chart is?
It's so an organisational chart, an org chart, if you don't know what it is just a simple graphic on a piece of paper or whiteboard that shows how the structure of your business sits. So at the top, in a circle, will always be you, or should always be you, I guess, if you own the business. And then your second in command would sit below, and then etc. What we find in a lot of businesses is that it's you sit at the top, and then there's a flat line of 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, and that will cause a challenge at some point, because there'll be a vacuum created, a vacuum of management and leadership, etc. So you always want to have some middle management or levels within your structure. But a future org chart is thinking, right, this is my business now, this is my organisational chart, this is my turnover, 300,000, let's say. In 12 months' time, I want the turnover to be 450. And that means this amount of homes in the market, that means this amount of viewings, that means this amount of valuations. What structure is needed in order to fulfill that, in order for us to get there? Because you can't wait till you get there to fill it, because then you won't be able to get there. So you need to have an understanding of what that looks like. And the way to do it is to forget who you've got in the building and just create the structure, your dream structure, if you like, of how you think it should look, taking inspiration from other businesses or other agencies that are where you want to be, and then go back in and fill in where your team are, where they are now, where they may potentially could get to, and then you've got a clear path on how your team evolves throughout the next steps of your business. And you can do that from a 12 months time frame. You can do it for 2, 3, 5 years time. So you always know what your next hire is. What we find a lot in the industry and in the mastermind is that people get to a point and go, oh, I've got too many viewings, let's employ a viewer. Or I've got too many phone calls, let's employ a negotiator, or whatever it may be, rather than having a clear idea on how that builds for the future and what your pyramid may look like.
Yeah, 2 things about that. One is, if you'd like to see our future org chart, just drop me an email, sam@ajmastermind.co.uk, with future org chart in the subject. And secondly, I think something you didn't quite make clear was that when you do the future org chart, there's no names in it, only roles.
I did say that, but...
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can go back and re-listen if you like.
I may do. So if it wasn't clear and you didn't say it, or if it needs repeating, then it's really important that anything that you set up for the future for your business doesn't have any names in it, but today's has names in it. So it's the progression between the two.
I literally said that.
Oh,
And then you can go back in and put the names in, like I said, and maybe you progress some people or have the ability to. But future org chat is the simplest way of doing it.
So something we talked about yesterday with one of our masterminders was his blockers to recruit and to move the business forward. And these blockers keep coming up, don't they? It's fair to say. But these particular blockers were actually pretty simple blockers, but I could see that they were mindset blockers. So one of his blockers is that there was only one bank card as a company. So one payment card, which always sat with him. So then he's the bookkeeper, isn't he? And procurement manager or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the second one, which is linked to it, is there's no team access to his bank account. So only he's got access to his bank account. That could give somebody all kinds of problems in the future if that person was incapacitated in any way and couldn't actually access his bank account. And in a funny reverse story, me and Phil don't have access to our bank account. We've only got one person in the building that has access to the bank account, and that is our ops manager, Edward.
That's not entirely true.
We have access to it. We don't exercise it.
We'd have to follow a task sheet in order to do it.
We'd have to know where it was as well.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you have at least one trusted other party. Now, there's all kinds of issues there, of course, like paying salaries and, those kind of things. So an accountant can pay salaries for you. You can get around this in lots of other ways, but no successful business ever has one person bank access, ever. And that will definitely slow them down. The other ones, which are a bit more practical, really, he's got no valuer other than him. So he is the valuer. And no plan B drone photographer. So they're much more practical things that he could actually recruit for right now.
Yeah, and one other thing we discussed yesterday was that the danger of number one in business, and this is a Dan Kennedy thing, across the whole of business being that number one is very dangerous, whether it's being number one in the area because you're there to get shot at and you can be complacent. One key member of staff in any role is always dangerous. One
key freelancer, like a photographer.
One pool car, whatever it may be. Having one of anything is really dangerous. So
this if you've only got one car key.
Exactly that.
Something will happen where you'll need a second.
Yes. So having plan B, C, D for everything is really important.
So one thing that we learned early on, and we actually did it by mistake really, which we recruited ahead of when we needed somebody. So when we didn't think we needed somebody, we recruited anyway. I can't remember the circumstances, and we definitely couldn't afford it. So all of a sudden we had somebody that sat in the office answering phone calls, booking in viewings, sorting out the post.
Yeah, and then that's the most common pushback, isn't it? That, I can't afford somebody else. And that's a fair comment. And it's all right us sat here just going, well, you need to recruit. But if the finances aren't there, then you do have a challenge. A few things to think about. The first one is you only have to pay them a month at a time. So don't think this as a £25,000 challenge. It's a £2,500 challenge. Now, obviously, you don't really want to hire someone and get rid of them after a month, but there is that option if it puts you into too much trouble. Mm-hmm. The purpose of the hire, of any hire, at this level, I would say this level by being where you couldn't afford it, has to be an investment. It has to give you something back, whether if it's a valuer, it gives you ultimately banked cash. If it's we call them client executives, or someone that can do the viewings, it's to give you time where you can go and create that bank cash. It has to be investment. It can't be a direct cost. And a direct cost would be something like an operations manager. If you think you can't afford an operations manager, it's probably not the right hire. You're probably too small.
Which is, probably true.
Yeah.
If you've got less than about 6 to 10 staff, you probably don't need one. But if you haven't got, say, an admin, you are the admin. If you haven't got a bookkeeper, you are the bookkeeper. If you haven't got a photographer, you are the photographer. And all these people earn a lot less than you want to earn as the agency owner. If you want to take 5k a month, so 12.5k a week, that means that's a significant hourly rate that I can't actually work out right now.
Yeah.
But it's a lot more than you're paying anybody else. So as soon as you drop down to a level that is paid less than you want to take as a salary, you're costing your business the opportunities that you would create otherwise.
Yeah, you've got to have the belief that you have the ability to go and build on whatever you're bringing in, whether it's time or money. It has to be seen as an investment in your business. When you first opened, you probably couldn't afford your own salary, yet you still went ahead and did it. It's the same concept. You're unlocking a door to a higher income, and that's how you have to see it. What do you say to, we had this yesterday, to people that say they don't have time to recruit or train?
Well, you're already too late, because if you don't have time, it's because you didn't recruit when you were supposed to recruit. So the best time to recruit is right now. It's that stitch in time idea,
How though,
isn't it?
if they don't have time?
Well, you have to force yourself to find the time, even if it's after hours, because nothing is more important, because you've literally put the brakes on your company. So that means you have to sacrifice something you're already doing, or you have to sacrifice even revenue just to get somebody on board.
Yeah, you can see how it's a slippery slope, though, can't you? When think about this guy yesterday who's back to back on vowels, so therefore doesn't have time. But if he swapped those vowels, or the perception is if he swapped those vowels for recruitment, that will impact financially, which would make him not be able to afford the hire.
And I can also see how that works. We had one of our masterminders a couple of years ago that said he was taking 10k a month as a personal income from the business because he didn't have a single member of staff. But that was all he was ever going to be able to earn, 10k a month. And what if he was sick or couldn't work for some reason? But in order to hire somebody who's literally going to have to give away a quarter of his income every month to them to hire, so he would see a personal loss on a monthly basis, and that's a bit he couldn't quite get his head round. So he went for a hybrid option, which is to get self-employed agents in, then found himself managing them when he could have actually just had a receptionist, which is what he should have done. So it is about prioritization. You will find the time if you absolutely have to. If your back is on the wall, you will find the time and the energy to actually start a recruitment campaign. But whoever you are listening to this, it's almost always the right thing to do right now. Even if all you did was put an advert on Indeed, if you just did that, it's free.
Yeah.
And started to see who comes through, what kind of advert creates what kind of response. You're learning all the time. You don't want to be learning when you're absolutely desperate for somebody. So if you either have 1 or 2 staff and it's not enough, or you have 0 staff and it's definitely not enough, what if you got a call from a developer tomorrow saying he's got 12 luxury homes all over $1 million, can you please market them? You actually can't do that. So you haven't created yourself any capacity to deal with those kind of opportunities. So to say no to the opportunity is going to cost you 20 years of recruitment.
Yeah, my first thought when you said that, though, was that a developer would never go to them because they're too small, which is sort of the point.
Yes. Because actually, what clients want is for you to have a team. They don't want you to be on your own, one-man band. They want to feel that you've got an actual recognisable business, that you're not just a one-man band trying to help them sell the property.
It is an industry misnomer about the vendors want you.
I'm sure the vendors would like more us, but they don't get it because we've got a really good system to look after them. But it doesn't mean that they only want us. They don't expect us to turn up for the styling shoot and then for the photography and then to be writing the copy and then to be AMLing them and all that. They don't expect all that. And I think they would be seriously worried if we did.
Yeah, I think so.
So it doesn't look good or feel good. One of our clients, our mastermind clients, is with Belvoir. And the Belvoir rep, or I don't know what she's actually called, area business development consultant, so that you get allocated this business development consultant when you're a franchisee for somewhere like Belvoir. And she came around to see our client, and told her that she shouldn't be using a photographer, she should be taking her own photography. And that's a perception, isn't it? That to save money, you do your own photography. But then you're on
that's
15
exactly
quid an
what
hour.
we talked about earlier on the defensive play.
Yeah.
That's 2-0 up at half time and going...
Yeah. It's actually contracting, isn't it? It's you contracting down,
Yeah.
you're not expanding up. So one of the things we looked at yesterday, one of the questions that we had from two of our lovely masterminders was, our team aren't working very well together, we want to take them on an away day, what should we do? And actually you very rightly jumped in and said, the team away day isn't the fix, the team structure is wrong. And so what we worked out was, because they actually had a team of 6, it's 3 in sales and 3 in lettings, that they could afford an ops manager of some kind, even if you don't call it an ops manager, for the group. So that's six people being looked after by one manager, so it allows them to move out or move sideways, so that they get supported from underneath by this person and the team get managed from above, which is exactly what it should have been. And once that was in play, actually the team away day made no sense.
No, I think it was the right thought process they were trying to fix, of what they're trying to fix. But and a team away day can work in some circumstances, but if the structure's right already.
Yes.
But yeah, if you add too many people to the same layer, you will create huge culture problems in your business.
Yeah, you said something yesterday that I thought was really insightful, which I hadn't really thought about, which is that when you've got a flat structure, human nature dictates that people try to fill it, and it'll be the wrong people that try to fill it. So somebody that's been there the longest, or somebody that's most aggressively ambitious, they'll be the one that try and step up.
Or if there's a big age gap, then the oldest wouldn't want, would be have fear of a youngster telling them what to do.
Yes.
Maybe.
So if you can't easily answer the question when you're not there, who's in charge, then you probably have got a flat structure.
Yeah, because they are asking themselves that question, if not asking each other.
Yes, you're completely right. Yeah.
And that leads to uncertainty, which leads to problems.
So we've covered the challenges and the problems that those challenges give you. We've covered a little bit of team structure in the future org chart. The recruitment itself is, it's a very, very complex subject, really. And what we do is we try and recruit slow. It's not always possible. Sometimes you've got to get a bum in a seat. We completely get that. But if you haven't started recruiting, start recruiting now anyway, whether or not you need somebody. Because by the time you find somebody and get them, on board, you probably do need that person. You almost certainly do. And actually, we've got a team of, 12 now. The chances of somebody going in the next 6 months is really high. And at the moment, we don't have a bench. We don't have a plan B for that role. So what we really want is a plan B for every role. And that's just good business hygiene.
Yeah, it is.
To keep recruiting and keep making sure you've got the right person there. Otherwise, you'll be straight back in recruiting again from scratch when actually that person has given you a week or 2 weeks notice and it's going to take you 3 months to fill that position.
Yeah.
So go through an actual proper recruitment process. And then when you've got them on board, empower them and train them, or rather train and empower them. So in other words, get the best people you can, train them to the highest standard, get the best people you can't afford, I heard somebody say the other day, which I like that. And then empower them, get out of the way. Don't micromanage them, except that they'll probably never be able to deliver more than 60, 70 or 80% of what we deliver, and accept that that's okay.
Yeah.
Because then you're out of the business, you're doing something else.
Yeah. So hopefully this podcast has maybe unblocked some thinking, or made you think actually that if the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years have been pretty stable and you can't really work out why, or you tell yourself it's because, and we've heard this before about it's the ceiling for the area or whatever it may be. The answer may be and probably is to restructure and or hire